The sky was the color of quiet. Soft gray, the kind that feels like the world is taking a slow breath. It was the first week of October when he saw her. Ethan had just moved to a small town outside Seattle with his mother. A new school, new faces, new hallways that smelled like fresh paint and nervousness. He didn't know where anything was. He didn't know anyone. He didn't even know why he felt so lonely. But he did, in the kind of way that sits in your chest and doesn't move. He was standing by locker 214 trying to figure out the combination when someone walked past him, slow enough to feel like a moment, fast enough to feel like a memory. Her, a girl with dark brown hair tied in a loose ponytail, a navy blue hoodie, and a book pressed to her chest, as if she was protecting something fragile. She didn't look at him. She didn't smile. She just walked by, but he felt something shift inside him, small but unmistakable, like the very first beat of a song he didn't know he was waiting to hear. He heard someone call out from behind him. "Bro, that's Amelia. Junior. Smart. Quiet. Don't even bother." Ethan didn't look away from where she had disappeared around the corner. "Why not?" he asked. The guy shrugged. "She doesn't talk to anyone, especially not new kids." But Ethan didn't believe that. Something about her didn't feel closed off, just hidden, as if she wasn't avoiding the world, just trying not to drown in it. Later that day, during English class, Ethan took the only seat left, next to hers. His heartbeat didn't just speed up. It panicked. Up close, she looked even softer than he expected. Eyes like quiet storms, lashes long, and the kind of expression that said she was miles away even when she was right there. When the teacher asked everyone to introduce themselves, Ethan stood up nervously. "I'm Ethan," he said. "Just moved here. I like writing." A few students nodded. A few whispered. And some didn't care at all. But Amelia, turned her head slightly when he said writing, as if that single word tugged on a thread inside her. When the class ended, Ethan felt stupidly unsure of himself. Should he talk to her? Would she ignore him like everyone warned? He hesitated. And sometimes, hesitation kills a moment before it even becomes one. She stood up, slung her bag over her shoulder, and walked away quietly. He almost let her go. Almost. "Hey," Ethan said a little too softly. She stopped. She turned halfway, not fully, as if giving him only the part of her she was willing to risk. "Yes?" she asked, voice gentle but steady. Sorry. I'm new. Do you know where the library is?" Her expression didn't change much, but something in her eyes did. A tiny flicker of recognition. Or maybe curiosity. "It's near the courtyard," she said. "I can show you. I'm going that way." He nodded, trying not to look too relieved. They walked side by side, not speaking, not looking at each other. Yet Ethan felt strangely aware of every single second. The courtyard was quiet. Leaves in shades of gold and red floated around them, and the air smelled like early winter. "This school gets loud," Amelia said suddenly, breaking the silence. "But the library doesn't. It's the only place that feels peaceful." He smiled. "I like peaceful." She didn't reply, but he saw the tiniest smile touch her lips, like she wasn't used to smiling, but remembered how to for a moment. When they reached the library doors, she stopped. "This is where I go," she said, voice softer now. "Every day, if you ever need quiet." It wasn't an invitation. Not exactly, but not a rejection either. She turned to leave, but then paused again. "Ethan," she said without turning fully, as if saying his name was an unexpected risk. "Yeah," he answered. "If you like writing." She hesitated. "Just like him earlier." "You'll like this place." And then she walked away. Just like that. But the moment stayed with him long after she disappeared behind the bookshelves. Something inside him whispered, "This is the beginning. This is the moment you will never forget." Even though he didn't know it yet, even though life was going to hurt him more than he deserved, even though this was only chapter 1, a part of him had already fallen. Quietly, carefully, hopelessly. After all, we never forget the first time our heart chooses someone. Chapter 2. The way she smiled without smiling. The next morning felt different. Ethan wasn't the kind of guy who woke up excited for school, but today felt lighter. like someone had quietly opened a window inside his chest, letting a small breeze of hope in. He found himself walking a little faster, not because he loved classes, but because he wondered if he'd see her again, Amelia, the girl who spoke softly, walked gently, and carried a world in her eyes. When Ethan entered English class, he tried not to look for her, tried to act normal, but his eyes betrayed him instantly. She was already in her seat, head down, a strand of hair falling across her cheek, lost in a book with a worn-out spine. He sat beside her. She didn't look at him, but the quiet between them felt familiar, as if they'd been sharing it for years. "You like mysteries?" Ethan asked, noticing the title of her book. She blinked, closed it gently, and finally looked at him. "I like stories that don't rush," she said. "Stories that understand pain takes its time." He swallowed. He didn't know her story, but something in her tone told him she carried storms she didn't talk about. "Yeah," he whispered. "I like those too." She didn't smile. Not really. But something in her eyes softened, and that softness felt like a smile she kept hidden from the world. During lunch, Ethan sat alone under a tree in the courtyard. He didn't mind. He liked watching the way life moved around him, fast and loud, while he stayed still. Then he saw her again, but this time she wasn't alone. A group of girls stood around Amelia's table, whispering loudly enough for her to hear. "Why do you always sit here? You think you're better than everyone? Maybe if you talked, people wouldn't think you're weird." Amelia kept her eyes down, hands tight around her lunchbox, as if she was trying to shrink into the wood of the bench. Ethan felt something burn inside his chest. Before he even realized it, he stood up. "Hey," he said, walking over. "You can back off." The girls looked at him, surprised. "Oh, look," one of them smirked. "The new guy thinks he's a hero." He didn't back down. "That's enough." A few students glanced over. The girls rolled their eyes and walked away. Ethan exhaled shakily. Amelia didn't move. She didn't thank him. She didn't even look up. She just whispered, very quietly, "You shouldn't have done that." "Why not?" he asked. "Now they'll talk more." He sat down across from her. "Let them talk." She finally looked at him. Really looked at him, like she was trying to understand something she couldn't name. "You're strange," she said softly. "Why?" he smiled. "You don't know me, but you still stood up for me." "Maybe I want to know you," he said before he could stop himself. Her breath caught, just barely, and she looked away quickly. He thought he'd said too much, but then she whispered, "No one wants to know me." "Well," he said gently, "maybe I'm not no one." She didn't smile this time either, but she didn't walk away. Instead, she opened her lunchbox and quietly slid half her sandwich toward him. He blinked. "You didn't have to—" "I know," she said, cutting him off. "But you stood up for me. So, just take it." Ethan took it, feeling strangely honored by such a small gesture. They sat together in silence, eating slowly, letting the October wind dance between them. And for the first time since he moved here, Ethan didn't feel alone. Not anymore. Not with her sitting across from him. Like the beginning of a story, he already knew he'd never forget. Chapter 3. The Day She Let Me See Her Quiet World. Ethan didn't realize how much he looked forward to school, until the next morning arrived, and his heart thumped a little faster at the thought of seeing Amelia again. He tried to tell himself it wasn't a crush, that it was just curiosity, just the feeling of finally connecting with someone. But deep down, he knew. She was becoming the quiet part of his day. He didn't want to lose. When Ethan reached school, he saw Amelia sitting on the steps behind the gym, a place most students ignored. She was sketching. Her pencil moved slowly, carefully, as if every line was borrowed from something fragile. He stood there for a moment, not wanting to interrupt, but she sensed him anyway. "You always walk heavy," she said softly. He blinked. "You could hear me?" She nodded. "Your footsteps? They sound unsure." He sat beside her, surprised by how comfortable it felt. "What are you drawing?" he asked. She hesitated. Then, very slowly, she tilted the notebook toward him. It was a drawing of the courtyard, but not the loud, messy version most people saw. Her sketch showed the way light hit the leaves, the way wind softened the edges of everything, the way loneliness could look beautiful, if someone cared enough to notice. Ethan whispered, "Amelia, this is amazing." She pulled the notebook back quickly, as if his praise scared her more than the bullies did. "It's nothing," she murmured. "No one likes the things I see." "I do," he said without thinking. She froze. No one had ever said that to her before. He could tell. Later that day, during last period, it started to rain. The soft kind that made the whole school feel quieter. The teacher allowed the class to spend the last 10 minutes reading, and Ethan noticed Amelia watching the raindrops on the window, instead of her book. "You like rain?" he asked. She nodded. "It hides things." "What kind of things?" "Sadness," she whispered. Ethan's heart tightened. He didn't push her. He didn't ask what made her sad. He just watched the rain with her, letting the silence speak for them both. After school, she surprised him. "Walk with me," she said quietly. He tried not to show how that simple request hit him. Like warm light through clouds, they walked side by side, down the wet sidewalk, shoes splashing lightly through puddles. "Why did you move here?" she asked. Ethan shrugged. "My dad got a new job. I didn't really have a choice." "And your old friends?" "I didn't have many." She gave a small nod, as if she already knew. "What about you?" Ethan asked. "Do you have friends here?" She stopped walking. Then, with a voice barely above a whisper, "I used to, before I learned that people only stay as long as you don't show them the parts of you." That hurt. He felt something deep in his chest. Shift quietly. "Amelia," he said gently. "I'm not like that." She looked at him. Not with hope, not with trust yet, but with a tiny flicker, like a candle trying to stay alive in the wind. "I hope so," she whispered. Then she handed him something. A small folded paper. "For you," she said, turning away. When he unfolded it, his breath caught. It was a sketch of him, sitting under the tree from yesterday, alone but not lonely, as if she saw something in him he didn't know was there. At the bottom, she had written, "You look like the kind of person who remembers everything." And that was the moment Ethan realized. He wasn't just noticing her anymore. He was falling. Quietly, softly, hopelessly. Chapter 4. The First Time She Let Me In. The next few days felt different for Ethan. Lighter somehow, as if every morning carried a quiet promise that he might see Amelia again in the places where the world softened. But Chapter 4 wasn't about seeing her. It was about being seen by her. It was Friday. The sky looked heavy with rain since morning, and everyone in school walked fast, trying to avoid getting stuck in the storm. Everyone except Amelia. Ethan found her near the back doors, watching the clouds with that faraway look. He was slowly learning to understand. "You're waiting for the rain," he said. She didn't turn to him, but he saw her smile. A small curve, gentle and disappearing quickly. "It's the only time the world gets quiet," she whispered. He stepped closer, close enough to hear her breath, but not enough to scare her. "Do you want to walk home together?" he asked carefully. Amelia hesitated for several seconds, before nodding once. That single nod felt like an entire world opening. The rain started as soon as they stepped outside, a cold drizzle that turned the parking lot into a mirror of puddles and quiet reflections. They walked side by side, their jackets turning darker under the rain. Normally, Ethan would have tried to talk, fill the silence, say something funny or light. But today, silence felt perfect. After a while, Amelia spoke. "My mom says rain ruins everything," she murmured. "Hair, makeup, clothes. But I think rain makes things honest." "How?" Ethan asked. She looked at the street, puddles gathering around the tires of parked cars. "You can't pretend you're okay in the rain," she said softly. "It shows how tired you really are." Ethan stopped walking. Something inside him cracked open, the part he never let anyone touch. "My parents fight a lot," he admitted quietly. "I act like it doesn't bother me, but sometimes I stay up just listening, so I don't feel alone." Amelia looked up at him. Really looked. Not with pity, not with judgment, but with the kind of understanding that made his chest hurt. "You don't have to pretend with me," she whispered. It was the first time she had ever said something like that, the first time she let him into her world. By the time they reached her street, the rain had become heavier, soft sheets falling steadily, like a quiet curtain between them and the rest of life. Her house looked small and dim, a warm light glowing through one window. She stepped toward the porch, but then paused. "Ethan," she said, turning back. "Yes?" She held out her hand, barely, timidly, palm facing upward. He didn't know what it meant, but he placed his hand in hers gently. Her fingers were cold, small, shaking slightly. "This," she said, eyes on their hands, "is me trusting you." Ethan swallowed. He didn't say a word. He just let the rain fall around them, as her fingers slowly tightened around his, not seeking warmth, but safety. A quiet promise passed between them. Soft as a raindrop on glass. We don't have to be alone anymore. After a moment, she let go and stepped inside her house. But Ethan stood in the rain long after she left, the warmth of her hand still pressed into his skin, like the beginning of something he wasn't ready to name, and maybe neither was she. Chapter 5. The Night. She finally spoke the truth. Ethan didn't see Amelia for 2 days. Not at her locker. Not in the cafeteria. Not even by the back doors where she always stood, waiting for the sky to break open. It felt wrong. Like the world had lost a color he never noticed, until it went missing. By the 3rd day, he couldn't wait anymore. He walked to her neighborhood after school. Rain clouds gathering again, almost as if the sky remembered them and wanted to pull them close. When he reached her house, he froze. The front door was open, and shouting echoed from inside. A man's voice, sharp, cold, cruel. Ethan knew whose voice it was. Her father's. A sound of glass breaking made Ethan flinch. And then, Amelia's voice, soft, scared, trying not to cry. He didn't think. His feet moved on their own as he stepped onto the porch. The moment he stood in the doorway, the shouting stopped. Amelia stood near the wall, arms wrapped around herself, eyes red. Her father glared at Ethan for a long second, then slammed the door shut between them. The house went silent. Ethan stood there in shock. Snow began falling, thin, icy flakes drifting down in the cold wind. Before he could leave, the door opened again. Amelia stepped outside quickly and closed the door behind her, as if keeping the storm inside her house. "Hey," she whispered. Her voice cracked. Ethan didn't ask what happened. He didn't want her to break more than she already had. "Do you want to walk?" he asked gently. She nodded. They walked down the street in silence, snowflakes melting on their jackets, the world strangely quiet. Too quiet. Halfway down the block, she spoke. "I thought if I stayed quiet, he would stop yelling," she said softly. "But he never does. Not really." Ethan felt something inside him twist. "You don't deserve that," he whispered. Amelia looked at him, eyes shimmering with pain. She had held in for far too long. "It's easier to hide," she said. "Easier to pretend I'm okay at school. Easier to smile so no one asks questions." She stopped walking. The wind tugged at her hair as she stared at the ground. "You're the only one I can't pretend with," she said quietly. "When I see you, everything I'm holding in, it gets harder to hide." Ethan swallowed hard. Not because he didn't know what to say, but because her honesty was breaking him in a way that felt painfully beautiful. He stepped closer, not touching her, not rushing her, just standing beside her, the way she needed. "Amelia," he whispered, "you don't have to hide anything from me." Not anymore. Tears slid down her cheeks. Silent, tired tears. That looked older than she was. He lifted his hand slowly, giving her time to pull away, but she didn't. Her forehead touched his chest, her hands gripping his jacket, as if she finally let herself fall into a place that felt safe. "I don't want to hurt anymore," she whispered. Ethan closed his eyes. "You won't go through it alone," he said softly. "Not while I'm here." They stayed like that, under the soft snow, two broken teenagers, finding warmth in each other, in a world that had given them so little. And for the first time, Amelia cried. Not because she was alone, but because she finally wasn't. Chapter 6. The Memory I Wish I Could Forget. The next morning at school, Amelia didn't look like the girl who cried in his arms. Under the falling snow, she looked normal, smiling softly, talking to classmates, walking with her books hugged to her chest. But Ethan could see it, the way her smile flickered, then disappeared. When no one was looking, she saw him at the end of the hallway. For a second, her eyes softened. A quiet gratitude he could almost feel from a distance. But then she looked away and walked the other direction. He tried to catch up to her during lunch, but she slipped out of the cafeteria before he could get close. After the last bell, he finally found her, behind the school gym, her favorite hiding spot, when she needed to breathe. "Amelia," he said carefully. She stopped but didn't turn around. "You disappeared all day." She sighed, not annoyed, just exhausted. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I just didn't want people to see me cry again." Ethan stepped closer. "Not too close. You didn't have to pretend today," he said gently. She turned to him slowly, wind brushing her hair across her face. "I know," she said. "But if I let myself be honest every day, I'm scared I'll break." Ethan felt that. Deeply. She tightened her arms around herself, as if holding her ribs together. "You were there for me last night," she said. "But today everything felt heavier. Like if I looked at you, I'd remember how weak I was." "You weren't weak," he said firmly. She shook her head. "I hate that he can still control how I feel. I hate that I can't stop pretending. I hate that you saw me like that." Ethan stepped forward, this time closing the distance. "You don't ever have to hide from me," he said. "Not the good parts, not the hurt parts, not the broken parts." Her lips trembled, and she blinked quickly. "To stop the tears. I don't know how to let someone stay," she whispered. "Every time I try, I feel like I'm going to lose them." Ethan's voice softened. "You won't lose me." She looked up, really looked at him, and something in her eyes shifted. Fear, hope, longing, all tangled together. "Why?" she asked, barely audible. "Because the first time I saw you," he said, "you were standing in the snow alone. And something in me decided I never wanted you to feel that way again." Her breath hitched, but then she whispered something he didn't expect. "Ethan, I'm moving." The world stopped. "What?" he breathed. "My aunt in Oregon," she said quietly. "She wants me to live with her. Somewhere safe. Somewhere stable. Mom thinks it's best." Ethan's chest hollowed out, like someone had scooped the air from him. "When?" he asked. "After winter break." He felt the cold, in a way the wind couldn't cause. She stepped closer, voice trembling. "I wanted to tell you sooner, but I didn't want this to hurt you." He swallowed hard. "It does," he admitted. Amelia's eyes softened as she placed a shaky hand on his sleeve. "Ethan," she whispered, "I don't want to go, but I can't stay here." He closed his eyes, trying not to fall apart. "When you leave," he said quietly, "what happens to us?" She didn't answer. She couldn't. The silence between them said everything. Her leaving wasn't a choice. It was survival. But it still felt like losing the one person he didn't know, he couldn't live without. Chapter 7. The goodbye that stayed forever. The night was quiet. Too quiet. That kind of silence that feels heavy, as if the world already knows something your heart hasn't accepted yet. He stood at the same place where everything began. That old wooden bridge above the slow river. The place where he first met her. The place where he first laughed with her. The place where he first realized, love like this doesn't happen twice. The rain was soft tonight, not cold, not warm, just enough to blur the lights around him. Or maybe it wasn't the rain. Maybe it was his eyes. He looked at the message on his phone again. "I'm moving tomorrow and for good. I didn't want to tell you because it hurts me too. Please don't come to see me. Goodbyes break me." He smiled, a broken kind of smile. She still didn't know. Goodbyes break him too, especially the ones that never happen. He took a deep breath, feeling the rain touch his eyelashes like tiny memories falling again and again. Maybe she thought he had moved on. Maybe she thought he forgot her. Maybe she thought 5 years were enough to erase everything. But she didn't know. Some first loves don't fade. Some first loves stay like a scar. Not painful every day, but deep. Permanent. Unerasable. He looked at the bridge rails. remembering the night she first told him she liked him, voice shaky, hands cold, staring at the water instead of him. He remembered how she used to say his name, as if it was something sacred. He remembered the promises they made, quiet ones, whispered ones, childish ones, but real. He whispered into the rain, "I hope you find happiness, even if it's not with me." A tear slid down, but rain hid it. He wasn't crying because she left. He wasn't crying because she chose a new life. He was crying because he finally accepted that her chapter in his story was complete. But his chapter in hers never even started. The hardest part of first love isn't the heartbreak. It's the truth that comes after. You never really forget them. You just learn how to live with the memories. He turned around, fully soaked, but strangely calm. The storm inside him had finally stopped. Not because he stopped loving her, but because he finally stopped waiting for her. He walked away from the bridge, leaving the past behind him, but carrying the memory gently, respectfully, like something too delicate to throw away. Some loves end, some loves fade, but first love stays forever.